Fort Scott was a settlement of debate and diplomacy. From its start in 1842 as a frontier fort to its role in Bleeding Kansas, to its prominence as the home of Gordon Parks, it stands for more than just a city.
The fort was named after General Winfield Scott and was first named Camp Scott.
It was initially established as an Indian outpost by the U.S. Army from 1842 to 1853 to keep peace between the white people and Native Americans and to preserve Native American land. According to Kansas, a land of contrasts, included in the population were a number of free African Americans.
The U.S. Army originally settled Fort Scott to serve as a defensive post in the frontier of southeast Kansas. Half of the population of Fort Scott wanted a railroad to be built through it, but the other half opposed this.
When the Mexican-American War started in 1846, most of Fort Scott's men went to fight in the war, leaving only 50 men for Fort Scott's protection.
Soon it would become embroiled in the debate over slavery. Later it was abandoned and then purchased in 1855.
The buildings were sold at a public auction, and the former fort immediately became the center of a rapidly growing town.
Two of the buildings became hotels. One, a former officers' quarters, was opened as the Fort Scott or Free State Hotel. Located right across the parade grounds was the Western or Pro-Slavery Hotel and other officers' quarters.
On the Kansas and Missouri border, Fort Scott faced violence before the Civil War, which reporters labeled as Bleeding Kansas.
Amongst the turmoil of the Civil War, Fort Scott was headquarters and even a training center for the Union Army.
There was a pro-South victory for Sterling Price and his Missouri State Guard.
Instead of stopping his pursuit, Price continued to push his troops north to Kansas City.
In the sacking of Osceola, Senator James H. Lane sent troops to attack Price from behind while he was still in Kansas City.
Fort Scott wanted to be the largest railroad city west of the Mississippi River. Later, Kansas City won this critical contest. About halfway through the 20th century, Fort Scott was a small industrial town.
Pro-slavers were border ruffians, and the anti-slavers were free staters.
Border ruffians were the people who voted illegally, made raids, and intimidated the anti-slavery settlers. Free staters were settlers in Kansas Territory during the Bleeding Kansas period in the 1850s. They opposed the expansion of slavery.
Bleeding Kansas was part of the political storm that occurred throughout the United States before the Civil War. This was a fascinating but very violent era for Fort Scott.
Then came the Mare de Seine massacre.
According to Dr. Craig Miner, by 1858, trouble had intensified in southeast Kansas. Radical components from other theaters of this conflict were now converging on this area. James Montgomery became a leader of Free State forces and was involved in lots of violent incidents.
In May of 1858, Montgomery and his men drove pro-slavery forces from Lynn County. Consequently, 11 Free Staters were pulled from their homes, taken to a small gully or canyon, and shot down. This incident, known as the Mare de Seine massacre, was rumored to have been plotted in the Western Hotel.
The poet John Greenleaf Whittier said that the Mare de Seine massacre, or March of the Swans massacre, was a stain that shall never bleach out in the sun.
1858 was the most violent year in Fort Scott because of all this.
This is what happened at the Western Hotel. Rice, an anti-slavist, had been accused of murder and was imprisoned in the Western Hotel.
Montgomery claimed his imprisonment was illegal, so he tried to rescue him.
According to Bleeding Kansas, Fort Scott National Historic Site, in the struggle following Rice's rescue, former Deputy Marshal John Little, a pro-slavery advocate, fired shots into the ranks of the Free Staters. Little peered out of a window of his father's store, the former post headquarters, to observe the effects of the shooting.
His movement was noticed by a Free Stater who shot and killed him. Little's fiancée, Jean Campbell, wrote Montgomery a letter reprimanding him and saying that he was a minister of the devil and a very superior one too. Here is what part of it says.
Fort Scott, January 4th, 1859. Montgomery, listen to me. Today I heard that you said in a speech a few days ago that you were not sorry that you had killed John Little, that he did not die too soon. Can you, before God, say so? Oh, the anguish you have caused. He was one of the noblest men ever created, brave and true to his country and to his word. You can't prove that he ever injured an innocent person. A few days more and we would have been married, then go south to trouble you no more.
But remember this, I am a girl, but I can fire a pistol, and if the time comes, I will send some of you to a place where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. You, a minister of God, you mean a minister of the devil, and a very superior one too. I have no more to say to you and your thugs. Please accept the sincere regards of your future repentance. Jean Campbell.
Anti-slavery forces prevailed as Kansas entered into the Union, a free state, on January 29, 1861. Fort Scott during the Civil War became the largest and strongest Union point south of Fort Leavenworth.
Fort Scott continued to be a place of debate and diplomacy after the start of the Civil War.
They left behind nearly everything in the way of food, clothing, and medicine. Severe winter weather, which almost immediately set in, brought indescribable suffering to these Indians. Many of them froze to death as they trekked toward virtually shelterless camps along the Fall and Verdigris rivers, where they stayed for a long winter.
After the Civil War, a treaty was established for peace. According to Forgotten Warriors, there was a civil war inside the Civil War.
Some of the Indians wanted to join the Civil War, but William Seward said, "Sorry, but this is a white man's war."
Gordon Parks's photos of his childhood were erased, so the pictures we portray today are of the people he saw during his daily life.
According to Gordon Parks, back to Fort Scott, Gordon Parks was born after the Civil War in 1912 at Fort Scott, Kansas, to a poor tenant farmer family.
He was black and faced racism and discrimination. When he lived, debate thrived as white people and black people still debated whether equal rights should be for all. Fort Scott, Kansas was an emotional touchstone for Gordon Parks and a place that he was drawn to over and over again as an adult, even though he had bad memories of racism and discrimination there.
Parks had become a photojournalist when he was 25 years old, and he made a movie called The Learning Tree.
This is Gordon Parks, successful and honored photojournalist. His career as composer, poet, and author has brought him worldwide recognition. His music, like the music you're hearing, has been performed by symphony orchestras in New York, Philadelphia, Venice, and Munich. His books have been published in 9 languages. The 15th and youngest child of a Kansas farmer, he told of how it was growing up in his best-selling novel, The Learning Tree.
Gordon Roger Alexander Buchanan Parks was born in 1912 in Fort Scott, Kansas, to Sarah and Andrew Jackson Parks, a tenant farmer and did odd jobs. Parks was the youngest of 15 children. His mother died when he was a teenager. This picture is not his family, but a family he took a picture of.
Gordon Parks returned to Fort Scott to revisit his early memories.
With the Back to Fort Scott story, Parks showed a willingness to mine his own childhood for memories both happy and painful, something he would continue to do in a series of memories over the course of his long career.
He is the first African-American writer, director, and photographer.
He died March 7, 2006, of liver cancer. He died at the age 93. His pictures revealed many things, such as presented questions, anger, and inspiration.